Welcome to the Black Entrepreneur Experience podcast, inside the business, buzz, and brilliance of Black entrepreneurs. Here is your host, Dr. Frances Richards.
What happens in Vegas goes all over the world on Black Entrepreneur Experience episode number 473. Thank you for joining us as we elevate the Black Entrepreneur Experience by interviewing CEOs, thought leaders, innovative thinkers, and Black entrepreneurs across the globe. I'm your host, Dr. Frances Richards. Our next guest helps self-funded first-time buyers execute excellent small business acquisitions and kick bad deals out quickly, saving time and money. Welcome, Elliott Holland.
Glad to be here. Excited. Let's have some fun.
Thank you. I've given our audience such a brief bio. Why don't you fill in the gaps and share with our audience what you'd like them to know about you and your business?
Sure. First off, I'm doing work very similar to the work my parents did in Detroit, doing accounting-related work and financial consulting. I'm a Morehouse grad, Georgia Tech grad, and then I went off and went to Harvard for business school. And I got into the business of buying businesses while I was in business school and just fell in love with it, particularly around the amazing opportunity to create wealth that exists within private equity or the business of buying businesses. After several years working with others and then working with myself, I realized I needed a few more rich uncles, for instance. And the leverage that people had on me because I didn't have rich uncles was making it hard to get things done. And so I had all these unique skills and I had to figure out sort of how to help people and start a good business at the same time. And what I realized is that a lot of the new entrants into the game of buying businesses didn't have the Harvard Business School background, didn't have the 8 years of private equity experience, didn't have real negotiation experience, and they were going to need a guardian to help them enable themselves to buy businesses, but not walk into seven-figure risk on a first-time acquisition and not know it. So that's kind of about me, about the business, and I tried to keep that short.
What is something that you learned about buying and acquiring businesses that you didn't know that you should know?
The main thing is that a lot of the participants in and around acquisitions have great brand names, great credentials, and age that you would want to trust them. From a deference perspective, you want to give them respect. Lawyers, accountants, business brokers. However, in this game, everybody has an incentive to get over on the entrepreneur buying the business. And so even though you have some of these older individuals that come from companies that may have esteem and respect, you have to check every single thing they're saying as if you were in the swamp or in a liar's poker game. So that's probably the most impactful thing that I learned that I didn't know that people need to know.
Someone's listening, Elliott, and they're saying, wow, Elliott is out of my league. He's talking about buying and acquisition, business acquisitions. I'm just trying to stay afloat as a emerging business, as an African-American business. Talk to the person.
You ain't out your league. You already have a platform. You're already in the top 10% of individuals in the country and top 1% in the world if you're just making it. And frankly, I'm 10 years into this business endeavor. Some people are probably in it more than me, but keep in mind, you may just not be where you want to be yet. The one thing I love about business acquisition that is applicable here is that with the SBA 7A loan, any citizen can go get a $5 million loan with 75 to 90% of it guaranteed by the U.S. government. And they can get it from wherever the local bank is. They don't need to go to a special city. They don't need that special credentials. You don't need an MBA, none of that. And so the bar to get in this game is low. It really just takes interest, ambition, drive, and a willingness to take on some risk. So for that person running an auto body shop, or that person fixing toilets that has a plumbing business or HVAC, you may say, well, let me go buy a $300,000 business. Let me go buy some trucks from a competitor. All those things fall in the realm of business acquisition. You might not think of it like that, but these are all under that umbrella. And the fact that you are excellent in whatever field of human endeavor that your business is in is probably the most important credential that the bank's going to consider on underwriting you to buy something in that industry or that space. Let me say it even more emphatically. 75% of my clients have no credential at business school, no executive level jobs, no anything that you would say, like some of the stuff that I've done, you don't need any of that to do this.
Who is your ideal client?
A entrepreneur who recognizes buying a business is risky, although very lucrative, and recognizes that when they're putting up 500,000, $1 million on a bet around an acquisition, that they should spend 10 grand, 15 grand to make sure they don't buy a crater, or like, we call it a lemon if you buy a bad car. So my ideal customer is anyone that seeks to buy businesses that recognizes there's enough risk to want to protect themselves.
Who are your top two mentors and what lessons did they teach you?
Oh, that's a good one. I would say Fred McDonald and Reginald Lewis. I worked for Fred for 3 years. He was a more experienced business buyer, and his ability to cut through just loads and loads of papers in detail to get to the so what and know what to do about the so what was uncanny. He really taught me a lot about that. And then Reginald Lewis is the first Black man to buy $1 billion business with a B, and he did it in the 80s. And his book, Why Should White Guys Have All the Fun, for almost any Black business buyer, is the quintessential read for getting your feet wet in this. And let me be very clear, the book ain't boring. He talks about growing up in Baltimore. He talks about going to college, playing sports. He talks about all the social stuff he was doing in business school. So this is not like a calculus book. So go pick it up if that kind of stuff interests you.
It is. It's a great read. Elliott, I want you to have a monologue, and I want you to name this person, living or not. They've inspired you so much. Who is that person, and what are you saying to that person?
I would have to speak to my dad, who did very similar work in Detroit and Chicago, although 50% of my book of business are Black clients. His percentage of Black clients was much higher. He helped a lot of the first Black business owners in Detroit and Chicago get bank financing for buying a McDonald's or a Mako or whatever automotive supplier that they were trying to put together. And so if I was speaking to my dad about sort of what he helped me learn, I think just the precision and high bar for client service. You can go into client service saying, I want to do enough, right? Enough to get paid. And I understand that point of view. But in business acquisition and professional service that's sustainable, people know when you're delivering everything you can or going above and beyond. And that's how you get referrals. That's how you get trust. And I think that it's so entrenched in my soul that I just live it. And so it permeates my business. And I can't even tell you how much return I get based on the fact that people know I'm not playing around. When it comes to money and advice, I'm not playing around. And so, Dad, thank you for instilling that in me at a young age, because it stuck.
And what was that catalyst for your dad getting involved in that? Because it seems like he was ahead of his times.
I presented to a big accounting firm in Atlanta, I think 2 or 3 years ago for Black History Month, and they asked the same question, and I love it. Black men, so my dad was born in 1933, so he was 50 when he had me. In the 60s, 70s, 80s, if you were Black and an accountant, your choices were being an entry-level accountant doing all the work at some white person's firm or starting your own thing. That was really it, right? It wasn't like you were getting promoted. It wasn't like somebody was going to see executive level talent in you in the 60s or 70s, right? So the first push, and I think why there's so many entrepreneurs from that era, is there was really no other choice to earn real money. And then I think for my father, you have to sell. So who's going to buy from you? Now, I'm not saying all of my dad's clients were Black or minorities, but what I'm saying is I think he knew where his message would be received the best and where people could look at his knowledge, credentials, understanding, and not his skin first. And so I think that's what pushed my father into entrepreneurship. And then the area that he chose, I think, is heavily focused on, and because of him knowing those things.
Advice you wish you had followed.
Ooh. That's a good one. I'm going to answer a slightly different question because I think it's more relevant. I was working in business acquisitions looking for deals where I could put very little money in and get large upside. And there were many deals along the way that my friends were telling me, hey, why don't you get a fee and sell that to a bigger private equity firm? Or why don't you partner with somebody and do it differently than your business partner who is very equity focused? And I think I wish I would have collected some fees on some of those deals as opposed to trying to do them all as the majority owner and swinging at a lot of deals that could have created revenue for me that didn't ultimately do that. So I should have picked a couple of dollars up off the floor.
There was a saying someone said to me, it was like, don't pass up $100 to get to a dollar.
Yes. Don't be penny wise and pound foolish. Yeah.
Elliott, what problem exists in the world today that you would like to solve?
You're asking bangers, just so you know that. I would like to solve the problem of African Americans feeling anxiety or feel that they're outside of the playing field for advanced entrepreneurship and financial things because we historically haven't participated and the markets are so wide open that I want to be a catalyst for people getting into the game. So my main business is a client service business, Francis, but I just launched a advisory business and a class where I'm helping people who are just getting started get up to speed in days and weeks, not months and years. So I think the problem I would like to solve, I would love if every Black person coming out of high school knew that business acquisition was something that was in their realm and opportunity set then and felt informed enough through my resources and others to go get it done with the confidence of a mediocre person.
Someone is interested in your class and interested in connecting with you. What is the best way for them to take advantage of that?
Yes, you should Google Guardian Due Diligence or Elliott Holland. If you get even close, Google's SEO will send you to my website. The other place you can find me is on Twitter. Elliott E. Holland is my handle, and then Guardian Due Diligence on YouTube. Any of those places you can find me, and then my contact information is on my website, so I'm very easy to connect with.
Talk about raising capital to start your business. How did you raise the capital?
Through customer fees. So I didn't take on any outside capital like a lot of people. Well, let me even double click on that. I had a very bad year, 2017. Had to move back in with my mom. I was driving Uber in my Land Rover in Atlanta trying to pay rent. It was a humbling experience. And when I got back on my feet, a Black friend from Harvard Business School who knew my skill set and needed some help doing an acquisition tapped me, reached out to me to get that help. And working with her for 2 years gave me the capital through fees that I earned in working for her to launch the business, to put the marketing out, to narrow the focus of what I was doing, to feel confident in my skills in a way that was different than I had felt confident about them previously. So I raised capital through customer fees.
Now, did this friend from Harvard, did she know that you had that moment of pivot?
I don't think she knew explicitly, but we had kept in contact in the 6, 7, 8 years since we had left business school. And I think we had both had periods of frustrating times. I'll use the word mental health because I think Black people get scared of it. I knew that she had some mental health years that were tough. I think she knew I had some. I don't think she knew how bad my 2017 was. I've told her now, but I don't think she knew that.
Speaking of mental health, let's talk about mental health and entrepreneurship.
My point of view is we'll take cholesterol pills, we'll take high blood pressure pills, we'll even take Rogaine if our hair is thinning, right? But people won't invest in their mental health. They won't go see a doctor about it. They won't take medicine. They will try to get off the medicine as soon as they get on it. And I think that's the incorrect way to think about mental health. I'm not saying medicine is the only way to help. Exercise, walking in nature, religion, having a strong friend base, being open and honest about your struggles with people, having a therapist. All those things help. But if you find yourself in a place where that's not enough, mental health will take you out. And it takes you out in weird ways. Like we know what alcoholism does. We know what drug addiction does. But one day I think I might write a book or an article on what poor mental health does that is equally as upsetting and limiting as alcoholism or drug addiction. Because very smart people who stumble sometimes feel like their one chance, or they went out in public and told everybody they were going to start this thing and this thing failed, and they just go into like a cocoon, right? And they become a hermit, or they drink too much, or all these kind of things. And I think that for entrepreneurs, you have to have a very strong basis, because people are going to call you stupid. They're not going to buy your stuff. Your money's going to be tight. Your people are going to be blowing money, going on vacations you can't afford. They're going to call you to go and you know you can't. They're going to ask you questions like, well, did you actually get as far as you thought you'd be by now? So you got to sort of be strong. And I would say I protect my mental health like air. So if something is impacting my mental health, it will have to get out of my way, or it'll have to stand up to me running through it, because I'm coming.
What is your zone of genius?
The intersection of understanding human psychology in the context of business and business acquisition. At the crossroads of those two streets, that's where I'm standing in my zone of genius. And I challenge anybody there.
And Elliott, what was that aha moment when you knew that you were going to be successful in business acquisitions?
There were two. I went to a fancy business school, but you might go to a not fancy business school or take Seth Godin's MBA class. When I was in business school, I realized that the smartest people in my class were the private equity investors. Not by a little bit, by a lot of it. How I define intelligence. You line up 10 people, they may define it differently. And I called 250 companies to get one yes to get into that industry. So I took 249 no's. And when I set out to do that, Francis, I thought about it like this, because I could have lost. One more no and I'd have been somewhere else, right? So I had to make a bet, and I knew that this bet would pay off. I knew if I got into business acquisitions as a career, I'd get rich. And then I knew if I got smart at that level, I'd get rich. So the first time I knew that I'd be successful is when I realized that the effort would not be wasted, whether the short-term thing hit or not. The second time that I knew I would be successful is when I started realizing that my messaging to everyday people buying businesses was so much better than my competition. And it came from all the experiences I had: high school in Michigan, Morehouse, Georgia Tech, my fraternity experience. So it wasn't like anybody else was going to be able to get there anytime soon. And when the messaging started hitting, Francis, I knew.
You mentioned your fraternity. Give a shout out to your fraternity.
Kappa Alpha Psi, till the day I die.
Love that. Love that.
Yo to the noobs.
We're going to have an attitude of gratitude. And I want you to have a thank fest. And I want you to thank situations and people that have inspired you. Ooh. Who is that? Have at it.
So I'm going to start with the one side and then spend most of the time on the other side. There were a lot of people that doubted me, that motivated me, and I thank them for their doubt, because it sure enough motivated me. I'm so thankful. On the other side, Conchita Tucker, thank you. I worked for a healthcare consulting business that did consulting around cancer, and they don't know this, but probably 80% of my business structure came from how they put their business together. So thank you for that. Fred McDonald, thank you for all the knowledge. Friends and family, thank you for the patience, because I certainly wasn't my best self at certain moments during this journey. My mother, for giving everything she had, even if she didn't have a whole bunch. And I thank the people who didn't believe that the services that I deliver could be marketed using digital marketing. I thank them for their doubt. So I was able to lay out a playbook on how to do it. And funny enough, Francis, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. I never have to go back to the folks that doubted it, but I see them doing the same thing I was doing 2 or 3 years ago when I started, and it always makes me smile.
Elliott, there's so many brands and businesses that are dominating. Talk about a brand or business that's dominating that you admire and why.
Great question. I would have to go with Live Oak Bank. And I'm going to stay in my zone of genius because I know not a lot of folks live here. So I'm going to stay close to my neighborhood, Francis. But Live Oak Bank is the number one bank for SBA 7A loans. Those are those loans I told you that anybody can go get from their local bank that are 75 to 90% guaranteed by the US government, meaning they're a lot easier to get. And Live Oak has set up not just the excellent lending platform, but a amazing you can get to know them platform. Their lenders are doing office hours once a week. Their lenders are active on social media. Their lenders are showing up to conferences and not showing up for one thing at 5 p.m., 2 hours of drinks and then getting out. They're staying the whole time and talking to people. And I think that I've talked to people from the fanciest schools and backgrounds and entrepreneurs that had to get everything off their knuckles. And when all of those people run into that bank, they get so much in terms of resources, access, and it almost feels like the neighborhood block party in a sense. Now, there's a lot of stuff that goes into getting a loan from a bank. I'm not trying to be silly about it, but most banks are too stuffy for you to go participate with folks that are just like you and I. And so I think that business model has done well for them. They're a public company, so you can read their annual reports. And I just love their business model.
And where are they located?
They're based out of Wilmington, North Carolina, I believe, but they lend nationwide. They actually have employees nationwide too.
Thank you for that information. What is next for you in the next year, Elliott? What is your goal?
I want to drop this. I moved to Medellin, Colombia, a year and a half ago. So I'm speaking to you from South America, and my goal for what's next for me is to increase the amount of advisory services that I have while penetrating more into the Black community with those services and freeing up my own time to be able to live life a bit more after a lot of 100-hour weeks over the past 10 years. That's what's next for me.
And why did you move to South America? Tell us that backstory.
Cost of living here is substantially less than even Atlanta, which is a lot cheaper than New York or San Francisco. And I mentioned earlier that Black entrepreneurs in the 70s and 80s had trouble with racism. There's a lot of stuff that you can still have trouble with racism in the States. And so I felt like the States and I weren't getting along. So we were separated. So I needed to go find a new bedroom to stay in.
Love it. What is your weakness as an entrepreneur, Elliott?
I can be too direct. I don't like people playing with my clients' money. And so sometimes when I see people try to play with my clients' money and I'm explaining it to my clients who are oftentimes first-time buyers, right? So like think about your mom trying to teach you how to cook that special pound cake for the first time or how to do some gumbo, right? You're green. And so she's slapping your hands and telling you don't do it that way. There are times, not a lot, but admittedly, there are times when I can get overbearing. And I've actually given small amounts of money back to clients where even though I felt that I said exactly what needed to be said, but the standard I have for customer service was so high that the only way to say sorry was to give them some cash back. So that's my weakness. Let's
talk about artificial intelligence. How do you use it in business currently, and what is your take on it?
It's coming. Y'all better get ready. It's coming. How I use it is my marketing strategy is a content-driven marketing strategy. And so although no content can be, let me say it differently. My content cannot go from me to Chat GPT to Twitter to LinkedIn. No, because it's not. It gets you like 75% of the way there. It can get you directionally, 3 or 4 ideas can get you 3 or 4 months worth of content that's 75% ready. And now I have to go through it and tweak it and put my voice in it and make sure it delivers to my audience. So I'm using it to scale the amount of content I'm able to get out into the public domain quicker than I would be without it.
And what about collecting data? How are you using data?
All the time. So what I love is I have one of the best data sets on the validity of the average business that is for sale, the validity of their financials. So I see 40 to 60 deals a year, and I have for 4 years. So recently I've been telling people that in 2022, 20% of the deals I looked at were so funky I would call them fraudulent. But last year, 2023, that percentage doubled to 40. And a lot of times when I say that publicly, people he and ha and folks that have interest on every deal that's out there being great will yell at me. But my response is, do you want to see my data set? I don't know why, Francis, but they never want to see the data set. I got the Carfax at home. It's on my computer. And I think when I understood that, I became more comfortable, how to say, speaking my truth in public spaces. Whereas before, I think I was a bit more hesitant to say something that might shake up a somewhat conservative set of folks that participate in my industry. So that's how I'm using data to tell the truth about how often these deals are wonky with the numbers.
Elliott, let's talk about legacy. When it's all said and done, how do you want to be remembered?
Probably two things. One, I want to be remembered as the guy who was a shooter, like Elliott was shooting. He missed, but he didn't stop shooting. That dude was shooting. He was trying things. He was not scared to put something out, realize it stunk, pull it off, learn from it, and put something better out without having to spend much time thinking about explaining the last thing that didn't work. The second legacy that I would like to have, and frankly, I'm doing it every day, is helping the legacy of helping first-time business buyers with a skew towards African Americans, because people like working with people who look like them, get into the 7-figure business acquisition game. And so I already have a list of people that I have helped, but I think my legacy will be, I made it that much more relatable to an audience of people that was left out or weren't being spoken to in words they understood. You guys have heard an accountant talk for 10 minutes. They ain't talking to nobody. Nobody listening to that. I'm packaging it in ways that people can understand.
How do you make impact daily?
Showing up every single day. Every single day. I make mistakes. Made one yesterday that I'm learning from and correcting with the client. I probably made a couple in my life, but with the client. I think a big part of the battle is showing up and being consistent, both in business and then in family. You know, I have a 14-year-old young lady that lives with me, and participating in her life and just being consistent, showing the behaviors that are what you want other people to embody and understand why, and not being scared to correct things that are, not going well, and not being scared to do something that may not have been the perfect thing and correct it tomorrow. But I think showing up is the biggest part.
Talk about fatherhood and entrepreneurship.
Very similar in my mind. As a CEO and owner, you have to set the direction. Everybody else marches to the beat of your drum because you're paying them. And although they should all feel emboldened to give you recommendations that are against or counter to or tangential to your vision, you're responsible for delivering your vision in your business. And I think in fatherhood, it's the same thing. You have to set the vision for where the family's going. And although I think communication and hearing people out are an important part of a healthy family, there also are times when you have to say, yeah, that's interesting, but we going this way. And that's not up for debate. Now, I think the fatherhood stuff comes from a place of love first, versus the business comes from a place of capitalism and profit first. So there's a huge difference there. But in terms of setting a vision and being held responsible for the achievement of that vision, there's a lot of similarities and commonalities there.
Let's talk about the last 30 days. What was your biggest win?
Launching my class. It's been on my mind for 2 or 3 years. I've been doing little stuff to kind of put it together. There was always one more client that I could get known revenue from, so I wasn't necessarily as incented to get the class. And a brother DM'd me, hey man, I want to get your class going like Alex Hormozy. And I know it was God to put this brother in my Twitter DM. because he's just been getting me together. So that's the biggest win is that I have the class that's set up. I have a couple of things to tweak, but it's ready to go.
And talk about course creation.
More people should do it. I am amazed at how effective an hour-long Zoom call, a 5-part series, a $500 class, a $5,000 class. I'm amazed at how effective these very low-cost things to create very scalable business models can do such a great job of teaching large portions of things that used to need a 4-year degree in that area, maybe a grad degree in that area, and maybe 2 to 4 or 5 years of mentorship working under someone to get that level of stuff. Now you can pay a fee and blow through the classes in a day on Kajabi and get the gist. Course creation, I think people sometimes don't want to recognize their greatness in their area of expertise. But I don't know a person that I talk to that doesn't have an area where I learn from them that could be a course. So if you're thinking about it, please go on the internet and look how easy it is to get that going. I'm going to shout out to Danielle Leslie, who has a course on creating courses called Course from Scratch that got a lot of us started. And so if you're thinking about how to get going, go seek out Danielle Leslie.
Thank you for that. Elliott, what is the biggest takeaway from this interview today? What do you want the audience to leave with?
That you too, I'm talking to whoever you is on here, can buy a business using the bank that's closest to your doorstep. And I want to leave people with the fact that that statement is emphatically true. I've seen it happen. I'm helping people do it now. And so if it's an endeavor that you have, come to guardianduediligence.com and we'll get you there.
What keeps you up at night?
I think what keeps every entrepreneur up, the realization that the sustainability of their business is fueling their lifestyle 100%. And so things that threaten the sustainability of your business keep you up because your lifestyle is on the line every day, every client, every deliverable. Now, as you get into it more, you're able to reduce the impact of any one single client or deliverable. But I think we all know that the environment that a business operates in can change like that. And so you got to both like deliver your service, have your vision, and watch out for the hook. You know, who's trying to knock your head off? You know what I mean? Who's coming for you? Who's taking your stuff and trying to go run your play with it? So I think what keeps me up at night is just thinking about ensuring the sustainability of my business.
What brings you joy and fill your cup?
Laughter. Yeah. Like even with my clients, and I know it's very serious topics. We're all in Excel and 20 tabs, but I don't think I've done a call this year where I didn't have some laughter in it. I think hanging out with friends, deep relationships with friends, what else fulfills me? My family. And I think like the daily challenges of seeking a better life, like even though it's a challenge, I think overcoming it daily is a huge source of joy.
I've heard a statement that your why should make you cry. Why do you do what you do?
Because it's mission critical. Your why should make you cry. I agree with that. If it ain't that strong, I would analyze it again. Now you might just be a person that don't ever cry, but if crying is something you do, your why should get you there. And I think, Francis, I knew how raggedy the business acquisition playing field can be for a first timer. I saw it. I experienced it. I was a first timer back in 2011 and 12, and I was making terrible decisions. Luckily, I had a business partner who was protecting me at that point. And so I think the mission critical nature of what I'm doing, helping people, everyday folks buy businesses with confidence, not having to worry about making the biggest mistakes because they have a guardian to help them, being that enabler for such an important demographic, the everyday person, is my why. And I got the feedback the other week that Elliott has a personal vendetta against people doing bad deals. And I had never put it that way, Francis, but it'll be on my wall here pretty soon because I do have a personal vendetta against that.
Without giving too much specifics, only say what you can say. Tell us a success story of, I know you have many, in reference to one of your clients.
Yeah. So I had a client, he's actually on my website on my testimonials page, so you can check him out. He came to me looking for, I do a mini audit on businesses for sale called a quality of earnings. So you got to audit the business because private company financials can be a mess. So he came to me for that, but he needed advice on like strategy around the deal. He needed advice on how to put the package together for the bank. He needed advice on how to think about forecasting cash flow. And so we went through all these things, and the deal he was working on, they had tried to get over on him by misrepresenting and overstating the profit substantially. And I ended up having to slow the pace of the deal down a couple of weeks to work with my client to make sure that his deal would still work, even despite their attempt to overstate profits. And when my buddy, and I'll call him that because we still talk, closed his business, he moved his family off the coast of Belize. Him, his wife, his two children, his wife worked in the business. And I just thought it was a magnificent manifestation of the freedom that you can attain through business acquisition, but the work you got to do to get there.
Elliott, if you conducted this interview, what is the one question you would have asked yourself? I'd like you to ask the question and answer it.
If I was conducting the interview, I would have asked Elliott, if I'm a beginning person that just heard you and is now interested in buying a business, where are the places you can start? Where's the 101 information, not the 201 or 301? And the answer I would have given is, first off, the HBS Guide to Buying a Small Business, which is free. The book Buy Then Build by Walker Dybel, which I think he gives it away for free sometimes, but even if not, I think it's $20, $25, an amazing investment. And then I'm a shameless plug for my website. I have the largest resource library for first-time self-funded business buyers, so everyday business buyers out there, blogs, videos, podcasts. So if you want to get started, those are the three places you should go.
We've come to the part of our interview. It's called Rapid Round of Fun. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'd like you to give me very quick answers. If there's something you desire not to answer, feel free to say pass. Are you ready for the Rapid Round of Fun?
Let's go.
What is your favorite comfort food?
Barbecue ribs.
The last movie you saw?
The Revenant.
You relax doing what?
Hanging out with friends, laughing.
Your favorite singer or rapper?
Nipsey Hussle.
Your ideal car?
Land Rover Defender. Those things are amazing.
Your favorite dance song?
Probably be something old school. I'm a Detroit dude, so something Motown. If it was I had to dance to it.
What food you eat every week, no matter what?
Chicken breast. That's my source of protein.
Relax or work out?
Both.
Elliott, Holland, thank you so much for joining us on Black Entrepreneur Experience Podcast. Before we let you go, share with our audience the best way for them to connect with you and to do business with you, and feel free to leave all your social media handles.
Sure. Go to guardianduediligence.com, and even if you can't spell it, Google will take you there if you're close. Go to YouTube and search Guardian Due Diligence, and go to Twitter if that's a social that you're on, and search for Elliott E. Holland or the King of QOE. And you can contact me in all those places. DMs are open, email and phone number on the bottom of my website. If you need help getting a deal done or learning how to do one, I'm your man. And you can engage with me in those places I just named.
Thank you, Elliott. That's a wrap.
Thank you for listening and subscribing to Black Entrepreneur Experience. We would love for you to leave a review and rating on iTunes and share with your friends. For show notes and more episodes, go to www.beepodcast.com. Join us next Wednesday, and remember, green is the new black. So keep your bank accounts and your business in the black.